My name is Rupal Parekh. I am an assistant professor in the School of Social Work and a coordinator for community engagement at UConn Technical Assistance for Brownfields, EPA Region 1. We'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Community Engagement in Aging Communities. Thank you so much for joining us. As the global population ages, communities must be prepared to address the complex needs of older adults and the environments in which they live in. Brownfields redevelopment projects present a valuable opportunity to support these needs. One of the greatest strengths of brownfields redevelopment is its potential to minimize displacement and promote affordable housing. The UConn Technical Assistance for Brownfields EPA 1 has developed extensive expertise in addressing displacement, affordable housing, and best practices for fostering open dialogue on these often sensitive topics. The goal of this session is to emphasize the importance of understanding the needs of aging populations across New England and exploring how brownfields redevelopment strategies, along with global initiatives, can contribute to creating age-friendly environments where all individuals can age with dignity and well-being. Next slide. So today in this session, I will provide an overview of aging demographics in New England, highlight global initiatives that ensure communities across the U.S. and beyond are aging well, discuss the role of brownfields redevelopment in advancing these initiatives, and explore best practices for engaging communities interested in age-friendly redevelopment, and share strategies for effective community engagement. This session will conclude with case studies from New England that demonstrate how brownfields redevelopment can help communities become more age-friendly, creating spaces and places where people of all ages can thrive. Next slide. So much like the rest of the country, New England's older adult population is increasing substantially. Actually, New England is the fastest growing area in the country. In states like Massachusetts and Maine, the number of older adults is nearly doubling between 2010 and 2030. By 2030, which is only 5 years from now, older adults will make up 28% of New England's population. Some of the smallest towns, particularly in northern New England, have the oldest populations, but are experiencing the slowest overall population growth. Another statistic is that over 28% of New Englanders age 65 and older live alone. So many of these individuals remain in larger homes or in housing situations that are not ideal for a single person, presenting challenges related to affordability, accessibility, and social isolation. Next slide, please. So maybe many of you have heard of the World Health Organization and the Age-Friendly Cities and Community Initiative. This is a global effort to create environments that support healthy aging and active aging. It promotes policies and practices that make cities and communities more inclusive, accessible, and supportive for older adults, and really for all ages. This initiative focuses on 8 key domains, which include housing, transportation, outdoor spaces, social participation, health, and healthcare, to ensure people can age with dignity and independence. So when communities adopt age-friendly, WHO's age-friendly framework, communities like New England, they could implement strategies like universal design. Universal design ensures that buildings, public spaces, products are designed to be accessible and usable by people of all ages and abilities, reducing the need for costly modifications as people age. Affordable housing, which is not always an attractive word in most communities, but what it does is it supports the development of housing options that are financially accessible for older adults, allowing them to remain in their communities and be active in their communities without the burden of high living costs. Accessible buildings encourages the design or retrofitting of structures to include features such as ramps, elevators, automatic doors, barrier-free entrances, making spaces easier to navigate for people with mobility challenges, and really all of us. Safe streets, prioritize age-friendly infrastructure, including well-maintained sidewalks, crosswalks with longer signal times. This is an issue in my community. Proper lighting, traffic calming measures to ensure safety for older adults and individuals with disabilities. Intergenerational programming, which I'll talk a lot about in this presentation. This is something that fosters connections between older and younger generations through shared activities, mentorship opportunities, community events, reducing social isolation, and strengthening community ties for both young populations and older adults. Cigna recently came out with a study, the most isolated population, most lonely population are not older adults anymore. It's actually Gen Z population that spend a lot of time on social media. I think it's 3 or more hours on social media. So this intergenerational programming is really good for all populations. So municipal policies, programs, and services, and this is what communities need to be doing now. They need to encourage their local governments to implement policies and services that support aging in place. So aging in place is that you age where you want to, where you choose to. That could be in your home, that could be in an apartment complex that is more affordable to you as you age. Making sure that we have accessible public transportation, home care services, and social engagement initiatives. So universal design really creates environments that work for everybody, regardless of age or ability, making it a fundamental component of age-friendly community redevelopment. So by integrating UD into housing, transportation, public spaces, communities can ensure older adults remain independent, engaged, and socially connected for as long as possible. I'm a geriatric social worker. I've been a geriatric social worker for many years. And I tell people, we are all aging. Hopefully we are all aging. We can't escape it if we're lucky. So brownfields redevelopment and universal design really go hand in hand. Redevelopment of brownfields can incorporate age-friendly housing and infrastructure using universal design principles. Mixed-use developments with accessible housing, healthcare, social spaces really foster intergenerational living. All right, next slide. Okay. So, like I said, we are all aging. So by addressing factors like accessible transportation, housing, all the things we've talked about, we really promote better quality of life, more independence for older adults in all ages, active aging. Older adults continue to contribute to our communities, and of course, social connections. Improved accessibility and mobility. We talked about walkable neighborhoods, public transport, and universal design really supports this. So there are real economic benefits here. When older adults can contribute to live actively in their communities, it contributes to local economy through spending and engagement in volunteer work. What we know about older adults is that they spend a decent amount of their time when they retire in volunteer activities. We have actually federal initiatives that promote volunteerism among older adults. Health benefits. An age-friendly environment can encourage physical activity, healthy eating habits, and access to necessary healthcare services, promoting overall health and well-being. Community resilience, creating a supportive environment for all ages and communities become more resilient and adaptable to the demographic shifts. And what we know is that all communities, regardless where you are in this country, really need to start preparing for these demographic shifts that we're seeing. All right, next slide. Okay, so I'm going to pose this question to the audience. How might age-friendly development benefit your community? Please feel free to speak up. I love that engagement. Anyone have any thoughts? You could raise your hand. All right, go ahead. I see a hand raised, but I don't. Donna.
Yes, I already live in a community that's looking at the 28% already.
Yeah.
And so we are finding we do have a lot of elderly who live by themselves in the house.
Say that again, Donna. You have a lot of what?
We have a lot of elderly that are living in homes by themselves, double-story homes that are not quite prepared for age-friendly. You know, the laundry's in the basement. You know, the bedroom's on the second floor. The steps are old. It's an older community, so the houses are very old, and so we're already where you're looking to be in a couple of years.
Yeah.
And you know, that's what we're trying to figure out, how to help some of our. We do have a senior high rise, which is always at capacity. We also have a medium high rise that also is usually at capacity. So the people don't want to leave town. They've lived in this town all their lives. They have their roots here. So we are having, you know, this kind of a problem. How do you help them?
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing, Donna. And I think, you know, Brownfields redevelopment really does provide this wonderful opportunity if you do have space in your community that can be redeveloped, thinking about mixed use housing, thinking about green spaces. We'll talk about that more, how to engage the community, you know, further to think about, you know, using this vital space that can really impact the well-being of everybody in the community eventually, right? Like I said, we are all aging and we will one day potentially use that space, if not now. But if we can make those spaces intergenerational, where both older and younger people are using those spaces, they make them more attractive for everyone, and communities more willing to engage in those conversations. Yes. John, did you have something to say?
Oh, yes, RuPaul, Newtown is pleased to be recognized as a AARP age-friendly community.
Awesome.
And we also recently had our Fairfield Hills campus recognized by the Connecticut Age Well Collaborative as a unique and welcoming outdoor space for their demographic and older folks and folks with dementia and memory issues. But we are still equally pressed because we're seeing too many of our lifelong valued seniors having to leave the community because there just isn't enough space. And my office, which provides oversight and support to the Fair Rent Commission in our town, is starting to see issues where landlords want to sell units that they were formerly leasing predominantly to older folks. So, you know, we've got a number of challenges here, but we also have a pair of mixed use projects on the drawing board that we're hoping to get off the blocks in the next 6 to 12 months. So we've got good things going on here, but we can't move fast enough in making affordable space for our senior population to stay in their hometown.
Thank you, John. Yeah, this is an issue that I think many communities are grappling with, and it's really coming to head. I think in the last few years, we're seeing the real challenges.
Yeah, just let Nadine know that's the key I put on her desk.
Oh,
That's
okay.
the new key.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, if we could mute, sorry, if we could mute our WebEx, that would be great. So yeah, I mean, John, thank you for sharing and caring about this population that has been living in our communities for a long time. They really, in order to engage them, to care about these issues, they know what they need. They know that there is a significant need in their communities. They're feeling it, right? They're experiencing these daily, their landlords trying to kick them out. Those kinds of things are not uncommon in most communities these days. And I have a lot of thoughts about it, and we probably need a longer webinar to get into it. But, I think, again, since, this is, we're talking about brownfields and opportunities for redevelopment, I'm going to get into that a little bit and how we can start engaging the larger community to start caring about these issues, and seeing how that they will eventually, if not, because aging communities are for all populations, right? That's the whole point of universal design. So how that it will impact them in their lives, I think is really important to get people on board to say, hey, we're going to have affordable housing. We're going to have mixed use spaces that are, senior housing. And you may not use them now, you may use them in the future, but they can also pose opportunities for lots of other things in the community. So let's talk about that a little bit. Thank you. Okay, next slide.
And
All right.
just before you start, I want to let you know it's 12:18, so you have about 12 minutes
Yep.
left.
Thank you. So age-friendly communities, like I said, really benefit everyone. I'll kind of skip over this because I think we've talked a lot about this. So, like I said, age-friendly policies are not just for older adults. They create inclusive spaces for all. We talked about the transportation and accessible spaces. It's really getting folks to say, hey, you know what? A sidewalk that doesn't have a crack in it, or we're building this new development that's going to be accessible and usable for parents that have strollers, right? Because I'm a parent that uses a stroller and I need that wide sidewalk. People with disabilities, young families. So this really encourages that broad community involvement. But one of the things and the challenges in redeveloping brownfields are, especially, for all populations, but maybe older adults. Many of these older adults have really been aware of the challenges in their communities, but they may be skeptical due to past unfulfilled promises or of improvements. So really making sure that they are, all older adults, really have that meaningful engagement where there's transparency, follow through, trust building, that really ensures that all voices are heard. But most importantly is recognizing and addressing some of those historical concerns can really help foster more inclusive and productive dialogue. And then I'm going to talk really throughout this presentation. We don't have that much time about intergenerational spaces, how they create a rare opportunity. And some examples are, talking about community gardens, mixed age housing development, and intergenerational learning centers. So this can be introduced in schools, in senior centers, really to start the conversation. So yes, we have senior housing, but we also have a community garden that all people can use, right? And these spaces really start help with challenging ageist stereotypes, right? So this sometimes can be a barrier, and I don't know if people are feeling it in their community in redeveloping brownfields into sort of mixed use spaces for older adults. And I know that affordable housing kind of falls into that as well. Also health concerns and the potential of redevelopment. So Many older adults are concerned about these abandoned, contaminated spaces and what health risks does this pose to them, like pollution, safety hazards. So communities really also need to be transparent about those sorts of initiatives and what that's going to mean, and how brownfields can really transform redevelopment. Brownfields redevelopment can really transform these communities into green spaces, walkability, improved air quality. Okay, next slide. So we at TAB have a framework. It's called the SEEDS framework. And the framework really helps communities best figure out how best to engage their larger community in brownfields redevelopment. And in the context of developing age-friendly communities, I'm going to kind of go through the SEEDS framework fairly quickly. First of all, we have to know who our stakeholders are, right? So who are the stakeholders that care about an age-friendly redevelopment? So this can range anywhere from, I mean, hopefully our local government does because of the demographics in our communities. And, you know, youth care, they care about their grandparents. So, you know, really kind of figuring out how to reach youth through those means. Businesses care about older adults, nonprofit, housing developers, transportation agencies, healthcare providers. So conducting a stakeholder analysis, which we can help you do this at TAB, really identifies who is impacted, who has influence, and who can drive positive change. So effective collaboration really ensures that age-friendly infrastructure reflect the real needs of the community rather than being a top-down approach, right? Which many communities have seen for a long time. Education is key here. We have something called Brownfields 101, which can explain how redevelopment transforms underutilized spaces into housing, parks, and community spaces. So that can be used by communities to better understand what is brownfields redevelop, what is a brownfield, and what is brownfields redevelopment. Okay. Empowering really intergenerational engagement. So we talked about that. Here's an example that I've seen done in other communities. Clean your park day with your grandparent. So these are all ways we can start engaging the community to really care about issues related to an aging population. We know our population, all of our communities are aging, but how do we care? How do we engage the community? We have to empower intergenerational engagement. Clean your park with your grandparent day. That can encourage young people to engage with generations while improving community spaces. Disseminate, okay? So building awareness through community events, senior game nights, neighborhood events, partnerships with schools and senior centers. I have been a geriatric social worker for many years, and I'll tell you, the thing that people care about, older adults, is these intergenerational programs. Where can we see young people? We don't see young people anymore, okay? So really encouraging this interaction. It also provides an opportunity to educate, gather feedback, and showcase redevelopment successes in your community, okay? And sustainable outreach. So making sure that we provide physical spaces that allow for community engagement about these critical issues, that the information that we're providing our community, the digital inclusion efforts, so provide seniors with free tech workshop, public Wi-Fi access, so that they can be, that if we have a website in our community that talks about the redevelopment projects, that they can access them. Of course, we want to have all types of media platform, but you know, giving older adults an opportunity to engage with those websites is critical. Making sure that we have equitable transportation and mobility programs so people can get to those community meetings, right? Vouchers, ride sharing, shuttle services. How can we make sure that all voices are heard and all people are at the table? Phone call check-ins, art workshops. What do older adults care about in your community? Make sure that you can find ways to bring people in. And again, like I said, a mixed media outreach. All right, next slide.
And Ripple, just so you know, we are at 12:26, so we just have a few
Thank you.
minutes left.
Okay, so how do we, making sure, and I think we've talked about all these things, so I'm not going to go over it, but some key areas to transforming brownfields into age-friendly development, making sure that community-centered design, right? So what we talked about, making sure that all people are at the table, sustainability and affordability. So thinking about when we think about redevelopment, think about why it matters to older adults, how we can make communities more sustainable with solar panels, green roofs, ensuring affordable housing. We talked about that, and partnering with healthcare providers to think about what age-friendly redevelopment looks like. And we already talked about intergenerational and mixed-use concepts, so we can go to the next slide. So here are a couple of success stories that I think are important to talk about. If maybe some of you are familiar with the Railroad Square in New Hampshire, this is a successful example of how brownfields can be transformed into age-friendly mixed-use development, addressing both affordable housing and essential services for older adults. All right, so here you can see that the Railroad Square was once an industrial hub, but over time it became underutilized area with potential environmental contamination. Like many brownfield sites, it presented both challenges and opportunities. So the site was transformed into mixed-use development, featuring 24-unit senior housing facility with service-enriched living options, medical offices to provide easy healthcare access, community spaces, and parks to enhance walking and social engagement. This redevelopment revitalized the downtown area, making it more livable, walkable, and accessible for people of all ages. I think it's important to note that this project was possible through both federal and state funding. So low-income housing tax credits encouraged private investment in affordable housing, in affordable senior housing, and home funds were supplemented with the low-income housing tax credit to make the project financially feasible and ensure affordable housing for low-income older adults. These funding strategies demonstrate the importance of public-private partnership in financing age-friendly development. All right, next slide. All right, so this one, maybe many of you are familiar with, is the Bartlett Station. This, I think, is a really powerful example of brownfields redevelopment that was created that can create age-friendly, equitable, and sustainable communities. So this transformation of a former mass transit facility into mixed-use intergenerational development is really revitalizing Brownfield's Roxbury neighborhood while addressing critical housing, economic, and environmental needs. So this was the Bartlett Yard was a former mass transit facility. Many of you are probably familiar, had long been a brownfield site, contributing to environmental pollution and health concerns in the community. The site was underutilized and represented a missed opportunity for community development, housing, and economic revitalization. So this was 8 acres. It's an 8-acre site, which is being redeveloped into the Bartlett Station. It has 166 for-sale homes, 214 rental properties, which obviously increases affordable housing, 30,000 square feet of commercial space. Building D is dedicated to senior housing facility, an outdoor park space, improving access to green space and promoting healthy aging. There is significant economic and social impact. 2/3 of the housing is designated as affordable housing. The wealth building for new homeowners is amazing. It's projected to gain $500 million in equity in over 20 years. Job creation will generate 100 permanent jobs and approximately 900 construction jobs. Over 60% of these jobs will go to workers of color, and over 60% of contracting dollars go to minority business enterprise. So this is pretty amazing. All right, next example. And I think we're done, but I'll just quickly go through this. The Ludlow Mills is also an amazing example. Also has senior housing, healthcare access, green spaces and walkability. And something unique about this space is the historic preservation, which is really important to many older adults, right? They still want to see their spaces redeveloped and modern, but they care about that historic preservation. So you see this example doing that. All right, thank you so much. I know that was quick. We could probably spend a couple of hours on this topic. So please feel free to reach out to us. We really want to hear from you. Here's our contact information. Please reach out directly to me if you have any questions about age-friendly redevelopment. This is an area of research and concern to me. I do a lot of work in this space, and all of us here are really eager to help you learn about your projects and learn about your communities. Thank you so much. Thank you, Gabby. Appreciate it.